Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the CBS Arena. 4 more goals for Norwich City, 3 more points for Norwich City, back into the top 6, back-to-back wins in the Championship for the first time since September. But a game that was not short of drama and probably displayed just how much more work David Wagner has to do at Norwich City to get them into a position where they can gain promotion again. This was some afternoon, chaotic, fun, exhilarating, hard to watch in places, but after what I think everyone has endured and what Norwich City have endured at points this season, that was really enjoyable, and particularly the second half. It's finished here 4-2. Norwich City won by 4-2. It was 3-2 after 25 minutes. It was 3-0 to Norwich City after 20 minutes. That hopefully provides an insight into the level of chaos and maybe lack of control that there was on this fixture, to be completely honest. So let's dissect it, because there were 2 very different halves, 2 very interesting halves, lots of kind of tactical nuances and tweaks that I want to speak about, players that I want to talk about as well. But first and foremost, I wanted to speak about an overview of this game, because after last weekend, when Norwich were so good and they recorded such an impressive result at Deepdale, scoring 4 goals, brilliant performance to back it up, there has been a lot of hype, a lot of excitement, a lot of expectation maybe that has surrounded this game. And actually, and you tend to find this in football, the game after can be somewhat of a hangover. It can be difficult. There can be complacency. There can be difficult moments that you have to navigate, and it can feel a lot tougher for no real reason, to be completely honest. So the fact, strip everything else away, that Norwich City have been able to come here, win at a place that Coventry don't give a lot here. They've only lost 3 times prior to today here. Illustrates how important a win this was. And actually, when the momentum was swinging against Norwich City in the first half, it's easy to say this, but earlier on in the season, they would have completely lost their grip on that game and would have been unable to stop, I guess, Coventry and what they were doing, and they wouldn't have been able to stem the tide in the way that they did. 3 important points given where they are, the momentum, the feeling around the place, the feeling around what David Wagner has been able to create in such a short period of time. So purely looking at the results, or the result, and I'm not a massive fan of doing that, if I'm being honest, this is really, really impressive to score 4 goals in your first 2 games, both away from home, to record 6 points from 6. I think a lot of people will be looking at David Wagner and offering him a real amount of praise for his contribution and what he's been able to do at Norwich City so far. Because for everything that this squad wasn't under Dean Smith, they lacked energy, they lacked creativity, they lacked attacking intent. All of those 3 things are evident and more in the David Wagner team, and we're seeing that now increasingly. And that was documented as maybe a segue into the first half, into their first 3 goals, their first 20-minute performance, which was very good. They played some brilliant football, scored 3. Well, the first goal, I think, is an own goal. It was quite difficult to see because that side of the pitch was almost completely unviewable because of the sun shining down, which we won't complain about. But so to me, it just looked like Grant Hanley kind of bundled it into the back of the net. It kind of looked like it hit his shin and got into the back of the net, but it turns out it came off Michael Rose by the look of it. I haven't seen it back. The second goal is brilliantly worked. Kieran Dow, little give and go, plays in on El Hernandez. The first touch, you feel, absolutely kills him, but he manages to get it back in and slot it past. It feels like Ben Wilson should do better, but I think Sargent, if you watch it again, very intelligently just gets in the line of the sight of the shot, and that kind of means that Wilson is left to react quite late, which allows Hernandez to score that goal. And the third goal, which comes from a brilliant pass outside of the boot from Gabriel Sara into Teemu Pukki. He pulls the ball back, and there's Josh Sargent with his 10th goal of the season, I think. So for Norwich City to have both strikers on 10 goals is really impressive. Good for Sargent as well, who hasn't scored since before the World Cup break. So good for him to get a goal, and probably deserved, actually, on the merit of what he did last week, where there was a lot of kind of stuff that he was doing that was in order to aid his teammates. So I was pleased with him there. And from there, Norwich looked in control. This felt like it was going to maybe roll into being a relatively comfortable afternoon, just as it was at Deepdale last weekend, that Norwich would continue to stick their foot to the accelerator. And to be honest, to win this game by quite a significant margin, because that's what it looked like. And again, similarly to what happened at Deepdale last weekend, Coventry didn't really look like they had the tools in their arsenal to deal with what Norwich City were doing in terms of some of the rotations, some of the movements, and also some of their work in possession. And actually, I think I mentioned this in my verdict last week. There were signs last weekend. Norwich had a little spell, if you remember, I think between the third goal and just after the half time, where they failed to control counters in the way that you would want them to, where Preston just tweaked their press and were able to get a little bit of joy. It's kind of what we saw on a bigger scale here today. Durbo in particular, they targeted Norwich City's left side, Dimi Yunulis in particular. There was a couple of poor touches, and I think maybe we saw the scars that have been left on this team because of everything that we've seen in the last 13 months or so. The lack of confidence, the kind of going within shells, the panicked sense on the ball that maybe they weren't able to clear their mind. And from there, Coventry and this crowd actually started to gain a little bit of momentum. And it didn't really reflect how the opening 20 minutes had gone, where Norwich had dominated. But from there, Coventry did assume control. They were dominant, they were probing, and they were able to get back in the game because Norwich weren't able to, as soon as Coventry turned the ball over, because of the way Norwich City was set up, they weren't quite able to counter press in the way that they would like, and that did cause some problems for them. And because of Coventry's press and how intense it was and their inability to play through it, that was forcing Norwich into individual mistakes, which was then creating those turnovers that was leading to opportunities. And because Norwich wanted to push the fullbacks so high up the pitch, it leaves spaces in midfield, and because it almost becomes a back three, and Coventry want to play wing backs, they were able to get men quickly forward, and they were able to create overloads in attacking areas, and that caused problems for Norwich City. But it was largely coming from Norwich's left, Coventry's right, and Dimi Yunulis was really struggling, to be frank, to deal with Darbo. They couldn't really deal with Guy Koresh in that period. He started to turn it on a bit. There was a couple of really nice turns, a couple of really good bursts of pace, linked the play really nicely. And they managed to get themselves back into this contest from a position that should never have been possible, but was possible because of what Norwich City maybe weren't doing off the ball. David Wagner has just said that first half fell beneath the standard that he would expect, which maybe shows how high his standards are, because the first 20 minutes was pretty good by all accounts. The second half of the first half, however, was not great. It kind of looked like Norwich of old, really. Quite sluggish, didn't really contain the energy or the clarity of mind to be able to execute some of the stuff they were trying, and Coventry punished them for that. Jamie Allen's goal, which was a sliced one, there was an opportunity to stop the cross initially from Yunulis, and it was a knockdown, and Allen was able to pretty much run in without any Norwich player on him to slice the ball into the top corner of the net. And that goal coming as soon after that Norwich's third as it did, and probably as early in the game as it did, gave some life to these stands and the people in these stands. And probably on the balance of the game up to that point, that wasn't really warranted. And from there, it felt like Coventry had the momentum. Norwich, because now they want to play in a certain way, they're process-driven, they're not going to change their approach to it. They had to find solutions from what they were doing, and they were unable to do that because Coventry were pressing so well, and they tweaked their press ever so slightly. There was a tightness to it and energy to it that maybe was lacking in the first 20 minutes, where they were a bit more standoffish. And that creates the second goal as well. Again, another cross from Norwich's left. Guy Koresh, again, heavy touch that kind of leaves him with his back to goal. There's some confusion. I still don't really know who scored, to be honest with you. I felt it was Palmer in real time. Then they announced in the stadium it was Guy Koresh. I think Sky announced it was Guy Koresh. BBC said it was Palmer. I'm not really sure. But anyway, I think Palmer takes it off Guy Koresh's foot as he goes to hit the shot. So one of them, we'll say, made it 3-2. And it just made this game unnecessarily nervy. And when we talk about maybe the work that needs to be done, I think it's illustrated there. And David Wagner will have seen it there, because actually, for all the praise that this Norwich City group have got, that kind of inability to control counter-attacks for one, but certainly the high press caused the problem. Coventry, because they were 3-0 down, were happy to take risks at that point to try and get themselves back in the game. And again, I felt it was almost a mentality point. It was almost like turning the clock back and seeing Norwich 3 or 4 weeks ago. Players were taking extra touches, they were making rash decisions, there was a lack of calmness, to be honest, in their play, and that cost them. So then it just felt about managing it until half-time. They managed to do that. There were opportunities. I think Palmer hit a shot over the bar, but they were able to get themselves into half-time still with the lead, which was really, really important, because I think if Coventry would have scored another one, this game would have turned in completely the opposite direction. But actually, David Wagner, and this is when we talk about differences in coaching and differences in style, we see it, and I've just seen that coming from Jeremy Dame, which I'll actually get up there. This is another point. Some cross distribution was causing some nervousness within Norwich's back line. That's an absolutely fair point, and one that it is worth tagging on to kind of the analysis there. But Norwich weren't able to play out in the way that they wanted to. And the second half, and again, this is when we talk about difference in coaching, problem solving, reactiveness, proactiveness. David Wagner makes a change at left back. Sam McCallum comes on. And what he doesn't give you is perhaps the natural attacking intent and real desire to go and attack that maybe Yanulis does, and that high positioning. So all Wagner did was kept McCallum a little bit more constrained, pushed Hernandez wider, so he's gone from being in the half space, that kind of space between the centre back and the full back, in that sort of pocket, to just drifting him back out, and that really nullified what Darboe was able to do on the right hand side, and also because Coventry were pressing and using that as a kind of pressing trigger to move to move up the pitch and to really try and force an issue out of Norwich. It just kind of contained that, and Norwich were then able to gain control and gain a bit more confidence in possession. It was a really slight, clever tactical switch that made all the difference. And from there, Norwich were able to have all the control that they lacked in the first half, where they were able to knock the ball around with confidence. They were at the right moments because Hernandez was occupying Darboe. If he drifted inside, Darboe would usually follow him, and that would create space for Sam McCallum down the left. And to be honest, I felt Coventry. So it was a combination of a really good tactical change, but also Coventry probably running out of legs in terms of what they were doing towards the end of the first half. And Norwich were utterly dominant in the second period. Could have scored more than they did. The goal actually comes from a brilliant piece of play from McCallum. Gets slightly lucky with a ricochet, but still has to pick out Kieran Dow, where perhaps a lot of fullbacks would have been willing just to whip that across kind of that I hate this phrase, but you know, the corridor of uncertainty. That's because everyone knows what I'm referring to if I use that, right? I don't like it, but you all know what I'm talking about. But instead of whipping it across there, and it's actually in that goal there, instead of doing that, he had the willingness just to pick his head up at that last moment, spot Dow. It's a really clever pass, and again, Dow takes a touch to push it towards the penalty spot, and that's when I think most players would have that kind of voice in their head going, and now you shoot, and now that's when the connection is made. Instead, he just checked back, just worked the opening for himself on the left foot, and then powered it into the back of the net, created just a yard for himself to take that shot and make it probably a better opportunity than maybe it was initially, and that was a really well-crafted goal. Tammy Pukki got sent through by Sarah, who had a really interesting game today. There was a little 10-minute period in the second half where some of his actions weren't the best, but actually some of his passes were excellent. Obviously, the pass for Josh Sargent's goal, but to Tammy Pukki, there was one in the second half, defence-splitting pass. But the energy that he's exuding, he looked a more confident player. And you're seeing this from a lot of Norwich players now, actually. They're beginning to play with their heads up. They're beginning to, and the second half exemplified this, maybe the first half contrasted it slightly. They're making better decisions in better areas. And they're able now to dominate teams and control games through the way they want to play, and it always felt like if Norwich City were going to these places and going away from home and winning, it was because they were defending well, they were having a relatively low block, and they were trying to hit teams on the counter, or they'd score a goal and then revert to that. And I think inviting that pressure makes life incredibly difficult when you come to places like this. So that fourth goal killed the game, I felt the energy and kind of the momentum that Coventry had. A lot of frustrated locals around here, not least my colleague Paddy Davitt, and some of Coventry's play. But Norwich limited Coventry to not a lot actually in the second half, and they had the better of the play. And there was some really good sort of spells of possession that just starved the life out of the game, just sucked the life out of the game that were really beneficial to what Norwich City were trying to do, and ensured that they turned from what was a really chaotic game in the first half to one that was really much more controlled, much more dominant, and that was much more in their favour. And they've left here today with 3 points and deserved 3 points as well, with the knowledge from everyone that there's still a lot to work on. But that's a hell of a position to be in when you've scored eight goals in your last 2 away games. And there's a recognition that there's still more to come and still more improvement that needs to be made. So that's a really positive thing. I just wanted to mention as well, there's a really nice moment, 2 moments really. First, obviously, in the 8th minute, everyone inside the stadium, and kudos to Coventry, they put it on the big screen. All of their fans and coaching staff joined in. A minute applause for Norwich fan of the season, Amber Seeley, who passed away after losing a battle with an incurable brain tumour that she had for 4 years, 1 hour before our 9th birthday. Absolutely horrendous story, really, and a horrendous battle with such a brave, courageous little girl, and someone who got shown so much love inside this stadium. It was quite an emotional moment, really. And then there was a real nice moment as Norwich were celebrating at the end in front of their 2,700 fans, where they had a shirt with the number 8 with Amber's Army on the back. David Wagner was wearing a little badge on his coat. Just a really nice touch, and that's what football is really about. And of course, my thoughts and all of our thoughts here are with Amber's family and friends. She was a remarkable little girl, and what a story that is as well. Final word goes to that away support. I felt actually that there were times in the game they were a little bit quiet, and that's understandable given the way it panned out. I feel like I need to lie down, to be honest. But those moments at the end, that's what just utterly joyous to see the players appreciating the fans appreciating the players, them having that moment together. This all feels a lot more positive. As I said, back in the top 6, back for wins for the first time since September, and it feels like the only direction is up. Of course, plenty more analysis and reaction across our channels. Thank you very much for watching this live. Thank you very much for watching this if you're watching on the pre-record. Do let me know your comments on the game and your thoughts as well down below in the comments. And as ever, from Coventry, from the CBS Arena, we'll see you again very, very soon.